Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting startup founders share their stories and strategies. They also deliver tangible lessons learned along the way that you can apply to your own startup. Each episode is a true masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with a special Encore episode of Rising Tide Startups, and I've got one of my favorite guests on here. That was guest back in May of 2020, I think is when we first met, and we've actually had great chats, often in between those times. But Peter Selby joins us from Bizdrivers.biz. Peter, thanks again for joining us.
Hey, more than welcome.
Peter and I were just chatting, and I just want to do a very quick recap episode this week, but there's such an important topic. So there was a post on LinkedIn, and it was a CEO that was talking about, it's of a relatively small company. I think there's 20 or 30 employees, but talking about having to lay off some of his employees because of a downturn in the business cycle. And he was actually crying in a video, post about having to lay these workers off. And it is such a polarized post. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of responses, 6,000 comments. I mean, and it seems like it's half and half. Like half are saying, you narcissist, why in the world would you do this? How horrible this is. The other half are saying how real and authentic and wonderful, that you're showing true emotion and you're compassionate. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on this. I mean, what is the role of a CEO? You've led your company for a long time, probably through some tough times, if you can look back some of those difficult cycles. But what do you believe is the role of a CEO? Is this a company or is this a family? I mean, how do you lead well? That's a loaded question, isn't it?
I think it's a bit of balance of all those things, right? I mean, you've got, one of your primary responsibilities from a employment perspective, of course, is to bring value to the shareholders or the stakeholders or whatever it may be. But there's also a sustainability element to the whole thing where, you're looking after the welfare of the organization, but also, the people in the organization. So as a leader, you kind of, it does become like a family. There's no doubt about it. It becomes very personal, and you are responsible for the welfare of people under your guidance, and you do end up getting very connected with those people. There's no doubt about it. So I'm not surprised the guy's upset for letting people go. It would be a personal thing for him. Whether it's a good idea to post on LinkedIn is another argument altogether. But yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stakeholders in an organization. There's the stakeholders that have an investment in the organization, as in the board. There's the stakeholders, could be the owners, whatever it may be. There's the stakeholders of the people that interact with your business, which could be customers or suppliers or whatever. And of course, there's the stakeholders that are adding the value in the business, so they're employees, and it's part of their life too, right? So, I mean, and the company itself has a social responsibility to those working for it. And the CEO is really the face of that social responsibility. So it kind of, it's the person that pulls it all together. Normally the football between the board and the front line,
So how do you, if you saw this post, what would have been your reaction? Like, what side of the camp might you have fallen in if you saw this post? And it was obviously a very raw and vulnerable post, but what would have been your reaction?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the question around what's the responsibility, what do you see a good CEO doing? They are leading and putting others before them, empowering people and trying to lead by example. Do you post it on LinkedIn? I wouldn't personally do that, but I'm not here to condemn someone or not. I think it's kind of, it feels a bit self-indulgent to me, but everybody's personalities are different. I don't know. I mean,
right.
He might have also been felt so heavily about the people he's letting go. He wanted to get something out there. Who knows? But I don't know what the motivations are. But I can see why it becomes personal. It's you do the people that are under your charge, if you like, as a CEO, and the people you think about when you go home at night and worry about their well-being and all that. So it doesn't stop when you shut the door. You do, you are involved. CEOs, we see CEOs transitioning into consultancies, and sometimes they're lost for quite a while because they've been in this environment where they've been leading a team for years, and then suddenly they're not, and all those people are gone and they're on their own, and it can be quite a shock for people. It's interesting, really.
Do you think it matters the size?
I just waffled, really, but it's it does pull
as
all
a good
together.
Politician does.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah, no, it's that whole leadership thing is really about being the face of the social responsibility for the company, protecting the welfare of the company, both from a bottom line perspective, but also from a people perspective, and also empowering the people around you, helping them reach their potential. That's really what the good ones do.
It certainly sounds like you have a kind of a holistic, approach to leadership, that it's not just a financial bottom line. It also is, the general welfare of those that you've been entrusted with. And you want to lead wisely and understand that sometimes you have to make tough decisions. But do you think that changes based on the size of the company? Like, does it become less of a family when you got 5,000 employees versus 50?
No, I'd argue you've got a bit more of an external communication activity to do if there's a lot more people, and directly reporting to you in your immediate team. That the size of that doesn't really change that much. There's just more there. But the principles of what you would do as a leader wouldn't change depending on the size of the company. It's just the principles of the way you lead, and I've led small companies and very big ones, and the way you approach that doesn't really change. The activity itself might change a bit just because of the interactions between a lot more people, but the principle's the same. Or at least that's my view. Of course, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of CEOs who don't agree with the word I've just said. It depends on depends on your viewpoint, really, as to what's good and what's bad. But I think you can't just trying to lead by the financials doesn't really work. And to be fair, people that are well engaged and are empowered to sort of realize their own potential drive a business a lot faster than someone trying to be a commander from the top. Command and control cultures don't really work that well, and they're not flexible, and they're not flexible for customers. You've really got to, and I'm not saying you have to lead by consensus either, but you've certainly got to engage the stakeholders, and also be wary of their well-being, in my view.
So Peter's in favor of the benevolent dictatorship. So he's that's the model that he believes in. But yeah, no, Peter, I really appreciate your insight today, and it's we wanted to be very specific on what we chatted about in this relatively short episode of the Encore episode of Rising Tide. But check out Peter Selby, Bizdrivers.biz, one of the leading consultancies in Australia, and with a global footprint. And Peter is a good friend and has certainly been a mentor for me, even on some of the calls we just jumped on that we didn't record. But Peter, thank you again for taking the time to share your insights on how to lead well, and specifically related to how to treat employees well in a downturn, and really anxious to see the feedback on this short episode, because it is such a hot topic right now. But thank you again for just once again playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Peter, have a great weekend.
Hey, and you, Kevin. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.